There's been some people, it's, like, well, if you have a big day like that one day, you're going to lose sales the next week. And historically, we've not seen that. I mean, maybe you have a slightly lower Monday, but then by Tuesday, you're balancing back out. Because, there's going to be some people who couldn't come to your sale day. There's going to be some people who just don't prioritize a sale because they were going to be wanting to go to an amusement park or something on the weekend.
Welcome to the Natural Products Marketer Podcast. I'm your host, Tina Maddock. On this podcast, you'll hear from manufacturers, retail owners and operators, and other business experts that will help you grow your business so you can serve more people and change more lives. Brian, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today, and you've got so much to share with us. So we're going to have you on more than once, for sure.
Hey, sounds good to me. It's an honor to be here. I love working with you.
Great. I want you to take us back to your first days of retail and tell us what moments or lessons shaped the way you run the store now.
I honestly have to say, I had no intention, I think, of it being a 20-year career. I think that's the amazing thing about our industry is kind of once you get bit by that natural bug, you can't leave. And you see so many people in our industry that might leave the position they were in, but they stay in the industry in one way or the other. And that's kind of what happened to me is I started for a summer job. And very early on, Karen and Laura, the previous owners of Get Healthy, really saw the potential that I didn't know I had. And it's something that they just really put me into the deep end, I guess you'd say, into immediately going to trade shows, trainings, seminars. And it really cultivated my passion that exists today. And it's something that I've kind of taken away from how they mentored me, and doing that already. I haven't even fully owned Get Healthy for a full year yet. And I'm already seeing some of my younger staff that just graduated high school, and I'm, putting them through that same process of taking them to Soho, getting them to do trainings, because, I don't see as many retailers out there doing that necessarily. And that's not a critique. It's more of an observation of, what I think could maybe help protect the future of our industry is if more retailers kind of, instead of just taking their buyers or, sales managers, really looking at the bottom up at cultivating and kind of growing the knowledge and experience, but also the passion in some of that younger demographic in their store.
Yeah. So when you first tell everyone who you are, I think most people who are listening to this know you because you're on the board. But tell us a little bit, like you own a store now, so you are a retailer.
Yeah. So I've been in the industry 19, 20 years. I started out as a bulk boy cleaning bathrooms and running a register at Get Healthy. Previously, when I first started, it was called Brooksville Natural Foods. And at that time, it was owned by Karen Greenway and Laura DeWitt. And, I went through the process of becoming a manager in training, store manager, general manager, to, when Karen and Laura both retired about 7-8 years ago, me and Kelly Derryberry, who runs our office, really kind of took over the full-on management of the entire company. And it was during that time frame of really having almost all that responsibility on us that I realized, hey, I could own a store. I could do this. And, there were some hiccups along the journey of purchasing the store, whether it be, starting a loan process and COVID shutting it down to, starting back up the idea of buying it and finding out that I had cancer. There's something to where there were ups and downs along the journey, but, ultimately, I have to say 2025 was ultimately a great year. I became a SENPA board member at last year's Soho trade show. And so this year at the trade show was my first year as a Soho, full year as a Soho board member. And then, I also was put as chair of the emerging leaders. So I think Jeff, the president, and Deborah saw my passion for making sure we find that younger generation within our industry on both sides of, retail, manufacturing, brokerage, and then, owning my own store. So I'm doing a lot, but I love it. And, I feel like if I didn't have such a passion for our industry, I wouldn't be so deeply involved in many aspects of it.
Brian, I don't think I realized that you had cancer. Wow, that is huge. I'm
Oh,
so
yeah, I just threw
sorry.
that one in there.
You totally
uh,
did. You sneaked it in.
yeah, no, it was 2023, 2024 was a little bit of a hiccup year. And certainly we have our moments during that time frame of why me. But I was raised to kind of look at the bright side and the silver lining, and ultimately I might have been very well versed in nutrition, but it made me dive even deeper into that particular subject. And I feel like I can relate a lot more closely to my customers who come in with similar health issues, or someone in their, one of their loved ones dealing with it. And I can authentically, walk them through my own journey with that. So in the moment, it wasn't a fun process, and it was very shocking. But we're on the other side of it. And if anything, I think it's made me a stronger person, and a more relatable, I don't want to say salesperson, but a more relatable person to those clients who are dealing with those health issues.
Yeah, just a human being that can have relationship and be vulnerable with people,
Mhm.
probably. Well, there is something about you, Brian, that's just a little bit magnetic. And I want to go back to the story of the previous owners seeing something in you. There are two things that come to mind for me. And one is there are a lot of young people looking for jobs right now. The
Mhm.
job market doesn't feel accessible to them, but you went into this as a summer job and it ended up something else. And I always talk about that. Like my first job was not where I landed, but it was a door into an opportunity that gave me more opportunity and more opportunity. And so if there are any young people out there who are listening to that, first of all, this retail business is something to look into,
Mhm.
especially if you like people and you like helping people and you have some ideas around being healthy and you'd like to know a little bit more about natural products as it relates to that. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in this industry for younger people to come in right now.
Oh, 100%. And I think, starting at a store level is a great opportunity to open the door to any position within the industry.
Mm-hmm.
In the career that I've had, I had multiple job opportunities offered to me, from, working for a brokerage to a
Mm-hmm.
vitamin company, a territory like sales manager type aspect, because, people would come in from different sides of the industry into the store that I was managing, and seeing what I had to offer. So, I stuck it out. I think I saw the bigger picture, and maybe there was a sense of comfort knowing that I was good at what I did, and a slight fear of jumping into something different. But ultimately, whatever journey I did choose worked out to where I wanted to be in life. But, I've kind of said that to other younger people when they're like, well, I don't know if I want to work in the store long term. That's okay. It's such
Yeah.
a, the great thing about our industry is it is so very close knit. And especially if you go to these trade shows, that ultimately you'll find that right position, you'll find something that works for what you're looking for. But I mean, you may not know where to start, but most towns have a local health food store,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of can be that first step. Or if you're a young person watching this and you already work at a health food store, maybe you're feeling like, I don't know if I love the industry, but I don't know if I want to be in a store for the next 10 years. There are growth opportunities within the industry itself, and we need it across the industry.
Yeah, there's so many people, retailers that come to us and say, hey, I'm looking for my next store operator
Mhm.
or store manager. Do you know anyone? So I know there are jobs and careers out there that are here, and you start somewhere and you show up and you do a great job. And then there are so many opportunities even outside of it. This is such a relationship business.
Oh, 100%. And I think it's one of those things too where I'm not taking away from all the experienced talent out there. I mean, there's people
Mm-hmm.
who, they're master herbalist, they are, certified, they can do consultations with people. It's something where there's all of that, but don't forget to look at what's within your own store that you might be overlooking in the sense of your potential management. Sometimes I have found in my experience, taking time to cultivate, train, and really develop a talent that you might kind of be like, oh, that's Susie. She's just after school on, after high school, she does bulk. I go back to that because I've worked with personalities that came from other stores. They were managers, and when they come into your store, they have a very set mind frame of how they previously did things. And that can be great. Shaking things up at your store can be amazing because it might shine a light on things that you thought you did well, and maybe you do, but maybe could be doing better, or
Mhm.
things that you fail out that this person could do. But I've also found with that experience, sometimes it can be a little bit of that difficulty of personalities because, I was managing people at when I was 18, 19, 20, and they were in their, 50s or 60s. And I never try to disregard their experience, but ultimately I had a job to do. And sometimes it didn't always work out personality wise. But when you're a store owner or a store manager, you can sometimes look at that younger talent and kind of cultivating it because each store has their own way of doing things.
Yep.
And if that works for your town, if that works for your individual store, sometimes you don't necessarily want that outside coming in and trying to make it a big store experience. So I think you have to look at it at both sides is, take a little bit of this outside your store experience and utilize the good things that can help grow your store, but also
Mhm.
maybe look at that in your own store, you know, kind of overlooking this younger group of people because you don't know where they're going to invest. It's just for a school job. They're going to go to college. And they're not going to stick around. But maybe if you put a little more energy into them and growing them, that could be your next successor.
Yeah. So you had a lot of education and opportunities for growth
Mhm.
whenever you were in the store. And that kept you there and made you even more passionate about the position. Is that right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that's the big thing is I always love going to, trade shows and seeing it's almost like a family reunion every year. The only downside of that is sometimes you only see the exact same people over and over again. And that's wonderful. It's great. You love to hear how their stores are doing. But at the end of the day, when you don't see them bring in, maybe not every store has that younger person that's even interested, but you don't see a lot of the stores bringing in their young talent. And I really feel like that's one thing that's lacking in our industry, kind of on all sides, is, taking a chance. It's an investment in my mind. I know it's a cost. You got to look at your bottom line. You got to look at how much it costs to buy an airplane ticket and hotel rooms and all of that. But really, I look at it as an investment. And this particular year at Soho, I brought my two youngest employees, my two newest employees, and I don't know if they're going to stick with me over a year. I don't know if they're going to be with me for 5 years. But for me, it's an investment because I know after I left even my first Soho, but I feel like every Soho, I leave more passionate and inspired. And, you learn so much that you don't learn in your store necessarily because you're just there for 2 days or, sometimes it's a 1 day trade show, but you're just immersed in our world that I feel like you just come out stronger and more passionate.
Yeah, I always say that the retailers learn the most from the other retailers that are there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you never take the time to get a minute to have conversation and build relationships with other retailers, it can feel very lonely out there.
Mm-hmm.
And you do start to work in a silo where you can run out of ideas you can get some fresh ideas and someone who's already experienced the pain that you're experiencing and the ways that they've overcome it just to generate, okay, what's next for us?
Well, I'm not just saying this because I'm on your podcast, but that's one thing I've always enjoyed about when you put on a presentation at some of these workshops and trade shows is, you like to take a step back and be like, okay, what's something you're dealing with? Let's talk about it in this room. Let's have a workshop. How would you, and I love how you kind of engage the crowd. You come with hey, this is my experience, but what are you experiencing and how can we solve that? And I think that's a huge thing right now. In all the years I've been doing this, I feel like there was maybe a little bit of a sense of, oh, that's a competitive health food store. My stores are here in Florida. And I'm fortunate enough not to have a crazy amount of competition, but there was always a sense of, oh, if they're a town away, that's like competition. As I've kind of flipped the script on that a bit, and I've said we are only going to be able to protect our industry and protect the independents if we're in this together. And
Yeah.
sure, maybe Mrs. Jones lives between our two stores and she shares a little love between both of us. That's okay. You know what? She comes to me for a reason. She comes to you for a reason. we don't need to look at that as we're the Hatfields and the McCoys and, we've drawn a line in the sand. We're stronger together. If I'm out of something, maybe I should call that other store and say, hey, do you happen to have something? Because they're probably going to do the same thing.
Mhm.
And I feel like collectively as independent stores, we should be ready to share some conversations and share things that are working for us or ask about some hiccups and issues that we're dealing with, whether it be ordering, sometimes only by voicing together to a manufacturer of, hey, why does Sprouts have this and we don't have it? Or, hey, why does, Whole Foods or Amazon have a product, but it says out of stock when I try to order it? When we are a collective unit, we're much stronger.
So much stronger, and people start to listen.
Hmm.
You have more, and I hate to call it power, but there's more influence whenever everyone starts to work together toward the
100%.
same goal. And look, we just saw with with SENPA that they were in Washington, D.C. Think of
Yes.
all the good work that was happening there whenever
Collectively.
everyone was coming together to do something. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So,
that's why
yeah.
that's why, even by no means do I feel like I'm some type of a social media guru. There's still so much that we all could be doing. But, it's something to where I feel like at least as a company, as a store, we've kind of gotten out of that like mundane, well, I'll send an e-blast out once a week and I'll, put a sales flyer on our Facebook because, some stores just don't know how to use social media, or
Mhm.
other stores think that their demographic isn't going to be digitally minded. But we have to realize that a lot of our shoppers who aren't digitally minded are aging out.
Mhm.
And a situation is our stores aren't going to sustain themselves by just repeating what we've done for the last 30 years and thinking it's going to work in today's society.
Yep.
And so, it's something to where we have to, as stores, actively be trying to reach out to uh, maybe people who don't know we're there, a younger demographic, and we've got to kind of shift how we've thought about doing things. There's so many stores that I kind of will talk to at trade shows, and it blows my mind that maybe they don't even have an online presence. They don't even have a Facebook page.
Mhm.
And it's something where they just never had to think that way before. I was somebody who, for friend reasons, I had Instagram, but I never even had a TikTok. And then, I had so many people coming in being like, I saw this on TikTok. And I was like, "Ugh, I gotta get one of those tickle tockles." So I started one for the store. And, I think you've been a viewer of what I do. And, it's something where I don't do the funny things and the jump camera. I'm utilizing my company's TikTok page for education. And I jokingly call it the anti-TikToker, because a lot of the things I kind of discuss and talk about on there is, okay, well, you've heard about this trend, but here's the reality. And, it's
Mhm.
just having a conversation with that camera as if I was talking to a customer coming in, asking about it in my store. And, so many people's like, I don't have the time. I don't have a staff member.
Mhm.
Hey, I own my store. I manage my one location. I'm the only person that does social media at the store. You can find the time, and there's so many tools at your fingertips that can make it so easy, and they're free. And it's something to where, my one video I do once a week then turns into a e-blast post. It turns into a Facebook and Instagram post. So, yeah, on a Friday morning, I might have to come into work an hour early to film and edit and make sure all the verbiage is great. But that now is, four different uses for me for social media. I know people are afraid of the term AI, but every store should be using a free version of ChatGPT in my head. And you literally can come up with marketing ideas by literally just prompting it with, hey, what's the top 5 search nutritional questions this week?
Mhm.
And all of a sudden it can just spur an idea of like, oh yeah, I've got, hey, it's what magnesium's best for muscle cramps. Okay, I could do a video on magnesium. I have a sale on Bluebonnet magnesium glycinate. It can really be a tool that can take your social media and marketing and outreach to a whole nother level. And I think some people get discouraged with things like Facebook and Instagram because they'll say, well, I did a post like almost every day this week and only like 3 people liked it. And well, unfortunately, Facebook and Instagram have you over a barrel because they kind of restrict how many people see what you post unless you boost. And a lot of people
Mhm.
don't seem to realize that, you know, you might be putting a budget towards print media, you might be advertising in a magazine, you might be, one thing that when I bought the company I did is I stopped doing sales flyers. Customers might seem to like the idea of a sales flyer, but those are customers already in your store. They're already shopping. So if you have your sales posted somewhere that they get trained, because you can train your customers to go and look at, they'll see what your sales are. If you have your store properly merchandised with sales signs, they're going to see
Mhm.
the sales. So that $200 a month that was maybe going towards printing up a sales flyer that only the people in my store already shopping would be seeing, that money is now invested into social media boosting.
Mhm.
And, I will do a little bit of boosting to my already followers so that they can make sure to see my post. But a lot of my budget is going into non-followers within my community, within a certain age demographic, so that I'm not just getting people to see it, I'm possibly getting new customers who don't follow me to come see it as well. So,
Yeah.
these are different areas where I get very passionate about because I don't want to just see my store succeed and go to the next level. I want to see every independent store succeed and go to the next level. And I think we need to maybe shift and change the perception of, well, this is how we've always done it. It doesn't mean that it's going to be successful in 2025, 2026.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much there, Brian, in what you were just talking about. I mean, one thing is that the demographics are either changing or you might be going backwards.
Yes.
So if your demographics in your store are not starting to change right now with millennials, Gen Z, and others coming in the door, then you might be going backwards in revenue. I There are boomers, there's Gen X, there's plenty of people that are still coming, and the ones that are loyal will be around for a little bit longer. But one of the trends that I am seeing is we can do a lot of things to increase sales from people who are already buying from you. But if you're not getting new customers in the store, you will probably be going backwards on the revenue needle,
Hmm.
or at least you'll be underperforming what the market is performing, the way the market's performing right now. And I'll tell you that these younger generations are interested. They're just not sure that you're there. They're
Hmm.
not sure that you're a place they want to hang out. And one of the things that they're looking for is not just product, they are looking for community.
Hmm.
We've said this before because I think all of us feel that way. Like after COVID, there was an opportunity for people to get reconnected by coming to your store with events and education and things that were happening there. But depending on who you were advertising to or doing outreach to, is probably people who already knew you. If younger people don't see themselves there in the trends, or if you don't really talk about things that are important to them at the time and meet them where they are in their life and their health and other activities, then it's really harder for them to come and participate in that community because they're like, oh, I don't see myself here.
Hmm.
I see older people here, which is wonderful. Please live on the older demographics, but also getting new people in is really important right now.
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, especially if we talk about, post COVID, there were so many stores who were afraid of customers not feeling comfortable with having an event or looking down on the store for being one of the, first places in the community to kind of allow, social distancing to be reduced. And, as much as I respect whatever people's opinions were, my thought process was Get Healthy has always been a place of education, a place of community. And if social distancing is at an end, then whoever isn't comfortable isn't going to come. And that's okay. I respect their decision. But I'm not going to base my growth of my store going back to what our standard is around the handful of people who may not be comfortable with that. So I don't know if this is 100% true, but I was told we were like the first health food store post COVID to actually host like a huge community event because it happened to be right around our 30th anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we ended up having, you know, some people who wanted to sit at the back, and that was perfectly fine. We had a few people who weren't happy we are hosting something like that, but all in all, we had two huge successful days of education. And, it was something to where people started saying, I've missed this. This is amazing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and, I will say it's changing now, but I feel like the industry in general took a step back post COVID to where I'm making assumptions to where maybe big corporate in the sense of managers and bosses were like, hey, we can save on, putting people out in the field because we'll just do Zoom trainings and we'll
Yeah.
do Zoom meetings. And I know I'm saying that as we're Zooming, but it's something to where, I really put my foot down and I said, no, I will not put a screen up and try to invite people to come watch someone across the world educate. I want someone in my store who can answer questions. There's not going to be technical difficulties. People want to feel like they are having an event.
Oh, yeah.
And, I feel like we've definitely within the last year seen a huge change in that because that was across the board in the industry of people wouldn't come demo and do samples. Some companies stopped doing samples altogether. And I feel like as an industry, enough stores said enough is enough. We need to go back to what our stores were all about, which was in-person education, samples, demos, tastings. And I definitely feel like we've seen a shift in that. But I can't stress enough to stores. These events are needed and wanted even if you don't think your customers are looking for it, they are.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter where your store is located, the answer is always no if you don't ask. You
Yeah.
know, it's something to where I might live in Tampa. My stores are I have two stores an hour north. They're not huge towns, but we can always successfully have an event. And brands now know if Get Healthy's hosting an event, it's going to be successful. But it's a two-way street. You've got to get that commitment from the brand, but you as a store have to have follow through,
Yeah.
and it's something to where I can't stress enough. You can't just put a sign up sheet out and expect people to sign up. It takes educating your staff to talk up the event, having a nice featured, product area of whatever is going to be talked about at your event. So people are like, oh, what's this? Start the conversation.
Yeah.
Then you get into the social media and the e-blast, and you have to be advertising this at least a month in advance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something to where once brands start seeing that you're going to be successful with this, they're going to keep supporting it.
Yep.
And once you start getting that same support, people start looking forward to it. I mean, this year, especially being in the South, historically we kind of coast through summer. We don't really do a ton of events. We in the past assumed, oh, the snowbirds want the events and
Mm-hmm.
we're busier during the winter months. People are on vacation in summer. And I just said, no, like my community, my core demographic who support me year round still want this. So almost every single month this summer, we had some type of event in store and people just were ecstatic about it.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I didn't realize would be such a hot conversation, but I guess I have a few stores that follow my social media was our Christmas in July event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, sometimes it's not always, maybe you can't secure someone to come do an education, but you can definitely still find ways to, have hype and fun and, something exciting happening at your store. And with July, I was just like, you know what, we're going to do a 30% off store day. Some retailers said I was crazy because they're like, you're giving
Yeah.
away your margin. And I said, no, there's enough times that maybe groceries give you a free fill and you don't fully put it. Obviously, you're not giving it away for free. There's brands that will do a line drive and you pass along some discount, but maybe not all of it. That for one day, if I do a 30% store-wide sale, I'm not going to lose money.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had, I think it was 12 Secret Santa presents wrapped up and put under a palm tree that was decorated Christmas at the front of our store. And it literally was just products that we had gotten samples of at trade shows or brokers had left. And, none of the staff really ended up, grabbing it to use it. So I said, hey, I want the smallest value to be $100 package. I want the largest one to be a couple $100 package. And I don't even want to know what's in them. I had one staff member just create Secret Santa gifts and we stacked it high in front of the store with a sign that said, ask how you could get a present this year. And the whole hype was if you made a purchase on our Christmas in July, it was just one day, then you got entered in for that present. And customers were ecstatic. I mean, they were so excited to come in and participate and not just get a savings, but maybe win a Secret Santa gift. So it's something to where, even just getting kind of creative like that, and you're not really losing money. You're kind of getting rid of some of the products that might be just sitting around in your storage or your office that just hasn't been used. And, you're building more of that buzz of customers now anticipating your next event.
Yeah. And just like creating a reason to come into the store is constantly important. And you should do it in a way that aligns with your values and what this store is all about. So I can tell just from knowing you for a few years, and also by you talking about the kinds of activities that you're doing, that fun is a huge part of what you bring to your community.
Mm-hmm.
There's an element of play and fun and activity. So of course they are going to be coming to the store whenever you guys have events. Other people, it's something different.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying other people don't want to have fun, but I'm saying there's a personality that your store has. So be faithful to it. And
Yes.
there's still a way to make things happen. I'm a huge fan of one day sales. It doesn't have to be on the entire store. It can also be on a product line or a product itself. But I do think that that limited time offer brings a lot of foot traffic your way very quickly. And then they come back again. Because these types of things, once they get into your store and experience the environment, as long as there is a personality in the store, they want to come back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's the thing too, is, there's been some people, it's, like, well, if you have a big day like that one day, you're going to lose sales the next week. And historically, we've not seen that. I mean, maybe you have a slightly lower Monday, but then by Tuesday, you're balancing back out. Because, there's going to be some people who couldn't come to your sale day. There's going to be some people who just don't prioritize a sale because they were going to be wanting to go to an amusement park or something on the weekend. But, all in all, it really has paid off in dividends in the sense of just, customers learning about it because friends were saying, oh, that health food store is having a big sale. So they came in for the first time. We've had other people that just happened to walk in because they saw a group of people walking in and was like, what's that? And, they were people who lived in our community for 10, 15 years, and they'll be like, oh, did you guys just open? And I'm like, no, we're, 35 years of business, basically. So, having those types of events can really open the door to leading you to new customers as well.
Yeah. And it's always funny, like you said, 30% off. And that is scary for a lot of people. We hear that a lot, even when you're like doing brand switching and other things. There are brave owners like you who are like, nope, we're all in. We're going to do something crazy. And they do it. And it turns out to generate a lot of activity and a lot of loyalty. So it's nice to hear sometimes whenever you take a risk. And I'll tell you, running a store, you have to take risks to figure out what's going to work for your crowd and what's not. And Brian, it could have been like, that was a mistake for you. I'm glad it wasn't, right? Yeah. But there is some risk that you have to take and be like, okay, that didn't work. We're going to do something else. But generating just new activity a lot of times is such a great idea. Again, as long as it aligns with your core values, then it makes sense to try these things out and see what works and see what doesn't work. So it's nice to see people taking some risks to figure that out.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I think my big thing is, there's such a concern in our industry of, well, I've got to be competitive to Sprouts and I've got to be competitive in our area in Florida, Publix. And, at this point, I don't even blink an eye at Amazon. For me, it's a situation to where I'm never going to be the cheapest product comparatively to Amazon. If I'm cheaper, the same price than the manufacturer product website, that's what I'm concerned about. If that customer goes to the manufacturer and I'm $10 more expensive, there's something wrong there. But if I'm the same price or a little bit cheaper than what they could buy it from the manufacturer, that's my concern. And I could be wrong on this, but I feel like there's so many people out there that are retailers that get so hyper focused with blinders on of Amazon, Amazon, Amazon. Well, I'm sorry. when a customer comes in, if they're going to be dead set on just Amazon prices and they're not going to support their local store, that's probably not my customer.
Yeah.
And I am all, I might be wrong in saying this too, but I'm all about telling a customer like, no, you're not right. I feel like I feel like that retailer motto of customers are always right isn't correct, and I feel like I've gotten more loyal customers by stopping them from buying something that they came in because it was trendy or TikToky or Amazon had it for a good price, and actually taking 30 minutes with them and educating them on why that's not what they're looking for. And, I've seen in so even just as whenever I go to a new town, I love stopping into a health food store. I'm a health food nerd, and it's like they find me. I just turn a corner and they're there. And, I'll stop in and I'll just kind of overhear and somebody be like, hey, I saw this online. Do you have it? And, some retailers might just be like, no, we don't carry that. And then the customer walks out. You know, I'm, I've tried to train. I would hope that while I'm not at the store right now, my staff are doing what I've trained them to do, which is no, that's not a brand that meets our quality expectations, but do you know what you're trying to use it for?
Mm-hmm.
And really kind of engage in a conversation. And I've had countless customers who maybe at first didn't like being told they were not, you know, we didn't carry what they were looking for. But when they stopped and heard the knowledge that our staff have at Get Healthy and our passion behind why we carry the products that we carry, it makes them at least 9 times out of 10 give what we are, suggesting a try. And because we do carry such quality products and they get the results they're looking for, they come back.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just had a lady this week, stop in and she's like, oh, thank God you're here. I'm so glad you're here. I'm like, oh, thank you. And she's like, no, she's like, I now, whatever you tell me to buy, I will buy it. She's just like, the first time I came in, I didn't know if I was going to come back because, you were very opinionated about what I was going to buy. I'm like, I'm sorry. And she's like, no, now I'm glad you stopped me. She's like, because she's like, what I got from you worked. What my friend got from the article we read didn't. She's like, and I said, you should have gone to the health food store. And I was just like, that's what I do, why I do what I do. I always try to do it with some grace and tact, but it's okay to tell a customer that they're not getting the right product. And, because I don't try to necessarily compete with the Amazon pricing and I'm not trying to carry every single TikTok product out there, and I'm willing to stand on the education to our customers, it allows me to price my store strategically with groceries. And maybe I'm not making the margins on groceries that stores 20 years ago did, but
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. For me, groceries in my store are kind of a added bonus to customer coming and purchasing. What I'm trying to do is make sure that I have the best quality supplements and lines that are supporting independent stores who are map pricing, who are giving me the ability to strategically do line drives or brand deals or those 30% off days. And I know I'm not losing my shirt because I've been strategic on how I've priced my store and purchased companies.
Yeah, we look at grocery a lot of times as a little basket lift. Now there are people that are mostly groceries, so this
Hmm.
does not apply to you.
Yeah.
But for the supplement heavy lines, groceries are a really nice basket lift.
Yeah.
So you can get the bigger averages there. But you were talking about TikTok a little bit earlier, and this is this whole conversation of people coming into your store. One of the things we talk about regularly is just when someone comes into your store and asks you for a thing that you're like, oh my gosh, no, it's not efficacious. Like it's not a good delivery system. You wouldn't be using it right. Like for whatever reason, the conversation is we love it when people are like, well, okay, instead of this, hey, we don't carry that. See ya, bye.
Hmm.
The conversation being around, okay, well, what were you hoping this would do for you?
What do you think it was going to achieve? Yeah.
Right. And
Yes.
then
And it's,
you guys have so many products and ways to
yes.
help people that are looking to achieve a specific goal. Why not try to help them solve their problem in a different way and then educate them around why this versus that?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think it's one of those things where, if for some reason it's a product like when chlorophyll got super trendy, okay, as a retailer, yes, you need to get on the ball, order several cases to have on your shelf, because after one person's asked about it and mentioned TikTok, there's going to be, multiple people coming in. But, when it's more of these niche items, that you're like, you know what? I'll use methylene blue, for example.
Mhm.
Wasn't really something we actively carried before TikTok. So, I waited till one of the brands that I knew I could trust their sourcing, trust their quality, and I got it from them. So I was behind the ball maybe a week, but I did not want to just order in a product because two people mentioned TikTok having, talking about that. Okay, well, maybe I lost those two people, but I'm getting in the brand I trust.
Mhm.
So I think those are some standards I would hope that most, stores would have, because eventually you're going to be stuck with some of these products on your shelf because the trend is going to end. And then, on top of that, yes, 100% having these conversations. And I think that's why I do the videos that I do on TikTok, is because I want to be able to maybe even give people a chance to educate themselves before they go and buy something.
Mhm.
Maybe they've been searching this trendy term. I think one of the ones obviously that was super hot for a minute was parasite cleansing.
Mhm.
Well, there was somebody that came in, actually had several people come in, that was saying, oh, all you need to do is charcoal and I think it was a distilled water. It was distilled water and charcoal, and you were going to cleanse. I'm sorry, no. Like, one, charcoal should not be taken every day long term. And two, distilled water eventually can demineralize you. So it was something where I'm like, I've got to talk about this.
Mhm.
And it really started people to have, at least the conversation of maybe there's a different answer out there. I've now started getting, I guess, enough views that people are kind of maybe not leaving comments in the video, but they're DMing me. And, I had someone ask specifically about the Sleepy Girl cocktail. And the whole concept is, cherry juice and magnesium powder mixed with like a prebiotic soda. Okay, the concept isn't bad, up your melatonin with the cherry juice, to help with melatonin production. But who wants to be getting their glycemic index spiked up with a soda and cherry juice before bed? Could there be a better method to this? So I feel like, a lot of retailers, and I've encouraged retailers, I am nothing special whatsoever, but if you want to use my videos and rebrand them or however you want, have at it. I mean, again, it goes back to that supporting the community. It's
Mhm.
just, I feel like that method could work for a lot of stores, because a lot of stores or store owners aren't goofy and wanting to jump around and have these like TikTok trendy videos. They don't have to be.
Mhm.
If you're providing good education, people are going to come back. So, if you have somebody who can at least just stand in front of a camera and, talk as if they're talking to a customer, you could really gain some traction with your viewership. And you also have to think, hey, maybe people who are viewing my videos are across the United States. They're not in my community. That's okay. They will be, and also
Mhm.
we get to see supporting other stores. One of my videos about Prop 65 ended up making sales for a store in North Carolina.
Mhm.
So it's something to where your videos might help my store, my videos might help your store. It goes back to that community aspect.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where when people see the education level that you guys are able to give, then I think they start to trust natural product stores in general. And
Mhm.
again, rising tide lifts all ships, right?
Yeah.
But also to your point about just getting started, it's interesting because it's very scary. Like getting on camera for the first time, it's not natural. It doesn't come natural to all of us. Some of us it does, but but most of us, it doesn't. It doesn't come natural for us to be, and you can feel wooden and feel like Ricky Bobby, like, what do I do with my hands, you know? But truly, I had a friend tell me the other day, I wrote a book and it was 50,000 words. And she goes, I know it was bad, but I feel like I need to write the first bad book before I can write a good one.
Yeah. You have to start somewhere.
Sometimes you just need to start producing. And when you look at it, if you think it's not great, it's just because you have good taste.
Yeah.
So then you get to develop a different aesthetic, a different way that you're talking, and you keep going. And then you can erase those old ones one day whenever you've got plenty of content out there that looks a lot better, or leave them out there because they're fun to watch later and be like, can you believe this is where we started
And
and here's where we
well,
are?
and I think that's the thing is, I kind of have two comments to that. And one of them is I say, if you stand there and talk to customers every single day, those customers
Mhm.
judge you way more than a piece of plastic and glass.
Yeah.
And I get it. Some people aren't as comfortable, but when you're in the store alone, like I am an hour before work, that camera is the least judgy thing in that store. I judge myself more than that camera does. So it's something to where I feel like sometimes shifting your mindset a little bit can make you a little more comfortable. And then two, just because you're the store owner doesn't mean you have to be the one doing the video. If
Yeah.
there's someone in your store who's just naturally charismatic and, has an ease about them, you can feed them lines.
Yeah.
You can give them, maybe they're not the most educated person in the room, but if they're willing to, kind of become a little bit of the face, and the personality, that's okay. I'm in a situation where that kind of was thrown in my lap before I was the owner because no one in the store likes their picture even taken.
Yeah.
And no one in the store wants to be on video. And so it's a situation where I was like, okay, well, I'm not trying to make this the Brian hour, even though that's probably what it feels like. I know what I'm good at. I know what I do. So let's utilize that talent.
Mhm.
And it's something to where I encourage store owners to do the same thing. You might like for people to know that when they come in, they should talk to you because you're the most educated. But if you're trying to venture into this new world, maybe it's okay to open the
Mhm.
door to someone on your staff who just has that je ne sais quoi quality about them to, kind of engage that next demographic and kind of be that outreach person.
Yeah, which kind of leads us into emerging leaders, right?
Emergent, look at that. That was such a good segue.
So good. You tell us more about what emerging leaders is. You mentioned it earlier in the podcast that you started working with emerging leaders, but tell us more from SENPA's perspective. What is emerging leaders and what are you guys doing?
Sure, wonderful. So before I was on the board, I was actually myself, Emily from Gastonia, the store health store in Gastonia, and then Ryan over at Peggy's, and we were like the first three emerging leaders, and part of that came from the fact that we were always at the trade shows. We kind of had opinions that we would like to voice, but none of the three of us could actually sit on the board because of just you know Karen Greenway, the previous owner, she was still on the board at that time before her passing. Renee was on the board, as a president. So it kind of kept some of us from actually being able to participate actively with the SENPA board.
Mhm.
So Ryan Sensenbrenner from Enzymedica originally kind of came up with the idea of, hey, we need to kind of find a way of having this younger talent who wants to have an opinion and has things to say, but can't really have an outlet for that.
Yeah.
So, a few years ago, the three of us kind of started out there. And then just how life happens, people go back to their normal jobs and people go back to, their retail stores. And, it was a great idea, but not a lot of follow through.
Yeah.
But hey, successfully now Ryan is on the board and I'm on the board. So something came from that original group of emerging leaders. At least we still stuck through and became active board members for SENPA. So then your counterpart, Amanda,
Mhm.
was on the board at that time before she stepped off temporarily, and she was doing things with the emerging leaders, and we grew. We did grow. We had more than three, but there still was a little bit of a what do we do with this group? And when I got on the board, I don't know. I have a hard time not doing nothing. And I had no intention of, becoming chair of the emerging leaders, but I think I do have such a passion about protecting our industry. And the only way we can do that is to make sure that we have a younger generation coming in.
Yeah.
And, for me, we wouldn't have an industry without the forefathers and mothers who built it. This has nothing to do with, out with the old, in with the new. It
Yeah.
has everything to do with if we don't find this younger generation to step into the shoes of the me so that I can be the Karen Greenway of the future, it's something to where at some point the industry is going to end on all sides. Stores are going to get bought up. Manufacturers are going to sell out to Coca-Cola, and we're not going to have the industry that was built by, the previous people who ran it, the legends.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just spoke at the first Northeast show that SENPA put on in Jersey. And, for me, I was, very passionate about the fact that, it's about preserving what the industry has done so well
Mm-hmm.
while protecting our industry by adapting and growing with changes of our industry across the board.
Yeah.
And the best generation to do that is the younger generation. And I also said, I've been doing this for 19, 20 years. And it wasn't until probably the last handful of years, so within my, mid 30s, that I actually felt I finally had a voice in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Here was somebody who grew up in the industry, and throughout my 20s, I'd have something to say, but there was no place to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it was because at these trade shows, it was always the same old, same old. And if it's not broke, there's no need to fix it. And, the board was always kind of ran by older people, and that's all fine. They protected our industry, but we didn't give that younger generation an outlet to have a voice and help grow and adapt. And, maybe if we would have been a little bit on the ball with how this, I feel like maybe more stores would have adapted to social media and
Mm-hmm.
trends and all of that if there had been that younger voice of being like, hey, you guys, I see this happening.
Mm-hmm.
People are on the TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I'm chair, I'm going to be obviously listening to the whole board, but my passion is really to keep growing the emerging leaders. I want them to be able to have a voice. I want to utilize them. I don't want it to just be a social circle that we see each other at trade shows. And I want us, right now, the running joke is the average age of our emerging leaders is about 43 to 45.
Mm-hmm.
I think our youngest emerging leader is around 33. So I want the average age to be much younger. I would love for that average age to be late 20s, because I feel like a lot of the people in the emerging leaders are already leading. They're already store owners, and that's fine. That's great. Anybody can be an emerging leader. But my passion project is to really make this even younger, to cultivate and grow and develop so that they want to sustain staying in our industry. I'm hearing from across the board, manufacturers, distributors, retailers, there's just not that younger generation that's showing that same interest.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we need to show them the interest back to receive that interest. So my concept and idea is to start utilizing the emerging leaders as a council for the SENPA board to have even more of a resource tool. When we're putting together trade shows, I would love to have every single emerging leader submit 2 people that they think should be at the trade show, subjects or topics that need to be discussed.
Yep.
And that just makes us a stronger board, because otherwise we definitely listen to comments, but not everybody's good about filling out the questionnaire after a show. So sometimes you've got the board sitting around being like, well, this is a good idea, I think.
Right.
And for me, I'm like, let's put these emerging leaders to work. It's not something to where it's not like working another job. It's not any extra commitment really, other than the fact that when I email you, you would hopefully answer them back.
Right. Yeah.
And we can utilize that talent for hopefully, podcast and webinars. I always ask when someone who is interested in filling out, the application, and it sounds like we're like exclusive, but we want to make sure that we don't have one store having 5 emerging leaders, when we really want to make sure that across the board, everyone gets a chance to submit someone to be an emerging leader. We don't want one company dominating the emerging leaders when, we want multiple companies from all sides to have an emerging leader. So we do have an application process. And I always ask, we don't need to have your full, medical history and all of that. What we're looking for is, what are your interests? Obviously an emerging leader who's super passionate about advocacy and protecting our, rights to sell vitamins isn't probably going to want to be doing a social media podcast, versus someone who might be really amazing at education and sales might not want to do one on, again, social media. It's about putting the right people in the right place to utilize those talents. And I'm sure there's going to be some cross,
Mhm.
expertise across the board. But, we have jokes, Ryan, he always said Brian's the mouthpiece and he's the numbers guy. We work really well together because I'm like, Ryan, is this the good margin? And then he'll be like, Brian, what's the TikTok trend right now? So, it's something to where it's about utilizing those talents as emerging leaders, even as stores.
Mhm.
We've gotten stronger just from the small group of emerging leaders because we've had more communication, more, I'm dealing with this in my store. I had a situation where I had somebody not in our actual industry, but one of those like fly by the night companies, basically saying I'm the most horrible retailer in the world, blah, 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 because I wouldn't bring the product in.
Oh.
And so I shared with the emerging leaders, hey, this is nothing personal, but here, this person is like trying to trash talk to me to my companies. If you carry them, just be aware, and again, it's something to where stronger together.
Mhm.
And I feel like the emerging leaders has kind of accomplished some of those things that I feel like the industry needs to be going towards.
Yeah. And, if I'm thinking about emerging leaders and your goal of getting much younger demographic in there, so that it's a great mentor program because there are leaders that have been established in this and have done a lot for the industry. These emerging leaders have the opportunity to mix and mingle with them, learn
Mhm.
things, and also teach. And so they're probably not listening to this podcast yet. Yet. Hopefully, we'll have them start listening to this podcast. So, I guess the call to action here, from my perspective, would be if you are a leader in this, if you own a store, if you operate a store, if you manage a department, and you know of someone who might be a good fit as an emerging leader, please contact Brian and the SENPA team and find out how you can get them plugged in. Because the more that you get them plugged in, the more sticky they are, either to your store or this industry. And we can all benefit from younger thoughts and people coming into the group and just making us a little bit more rich from a knowledge and skills perspective.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and I think that's my big thing is, I'm working towards, there's nothing concrete, so I can't say anything specific, but I'm working towards some ideas of, maybe some specific training at SEMPA that's just for that, the concept of the emerging leaders that would help with giving them more leadership skills and sales skills and management skills that is going to benefit a retailer store,
Mhm.
or even a sales team if it's on the other side, but also empowers them as a person.
Yeah.
Like you said, mentorship. This isn't just oh, bring them to a Soho and they're going to be
Right.
able, yep, that's great. But we are also going to be backing that up with giving you a stronger team member. And for them, again, you might be like, well, Susie's not going to want to do it. Well, maybe if she knows that there's going to be skill sets that she learns that she can utilize in any job that she does, and our
Mhm.
hope is she sticks with us, but regardless, maybe she'll want to dive deeper in if she sees that it's giving her stronger skill sets. So I think right now the preliminary is, like you said, whoever's watching this, there's someone on your team probably who could be a part of this. And it's about not looking at it as an expense as much
Right.
as an investment. Look at,
Mhm.
can we, I hear all the time retail, staffing, we couldn't have an extra person go. Actually, you probably could. You probably could if you convince that one person who doesn't like to work weekends that the weekend of Soho, they really need to work. We'll make it up to them. They're doing the team a big favor. That way, your younger weekend person who normally works because they're in school or whatever might get a chance to go. I think we need to take a step back sometimes as retailers and say, okay, or even manufacturers,
Mhm.
is this a cost or is it an investment?
Yeah. And I think people appreciate that. What's that old saying? Like, what if I train someone and they leave me? And
Yes.
the answer is, what if you don't and they stay?
Yes. Yes. 100%. And I think that's the big thing I go back to with, Karen and Laura. I have nothing but, appreciation because again, they saw
Mhm.
this 17-year-old that, you know, wanted to just work to pay off, oral health bills that I already occurred from wisdom teeth surgery. And here we are, owning their
Mhm.
business. And had I worked for a different owner, I think it would have been a different story, and that's not a criticism to other people as much as, I can honestly say that had I not had them encouraging me, pushing me, sending me to not just, nutrition training, but, management courses and
Mhm.
communication courses and how to run Excel, like anything that was kind of in our area that just made sense for our store. I was being paid to go to these trainings that was benefiting me as a person,
Right.
but was them saying, hey, let's just invest, let's double down, let's do this. And, had I worked for someone else, I probably would have felt discouraged, or I wouldn't have had that, my, the stoke the coals of the fire type of situation to light that passion in me. So, it's something where, because of how they just jumped right in and said, let's invest into him, we can now look and say, hey, they're happily retired, and they know their business is in good hands.
Yeah. And by the way, we interviewed Karen and Lauren. I think it was in the Karen and Laura, sorry, in the first season. So if anyone wants to go back and listen to that, they talk a lot about education. Employee handbooks even came up,
Mm-hmm.
and they gave us an example of that are in the show note links. So please, by all means, go back and listen. It's a very educational podcast with the two of them, and they're just lovely human beings. So we're grateful to them for spending their time with us, but also for investing in the future. I think they did us all a good favor. So,
Oh, thank you.
well, Brian, this has been so fun. Obviously, our time's at an end. You and I could keep talking for a
Oh, I
long
know.
time. Sure. So we'll have you back for sure. But this has just been such a treat. And I love the optimism and also just the call to keep investing in the future, both in our customers and in our employees, and be able to attract the right people to the stores so that this industry continues to thrive.
Oh, for
So I
sure.
appreciate all your insight on that.
Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to the next time.
Thank you so much for joining us for the latest episode of the Natural Products Marketer podcast, where we're here to help you grow your business so you can serve more people and change more lives. If you have any questions that have come up during this episode or others, or there's just a retail challenge that you're facing today, I would love for you to reach out to us at info@naturalproductsmarketer.com. We're here to answer questions. But most of all, if you have a question, then another retailer probably also has that question. So we can bring experts onto the podcast to give you the information that you really need. And if you liked what you heard, give us a thumbs up or give us a review on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening today. All right. It was great to see you.